welcome everyone. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. We're very excited because this is our 5th webinar in the series where we speak to leaders in the fresh produce world. These are casual and relaxed sessions, so we really hope that you kick back, enjoy, and look forward to the insights for the next 25 minutes or so. So Sachin, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Georgie, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sachin Shende, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of KisanHub. Thank you very much for joining for our monthly webinar series with leaders from fresh produce industry. KisanHub is an enterprise-level software as a service platform for agri-food industry. Our clients are mainly in fresh produce and processing sector. The software itself is used by farmers, agronomists, field officers, procurement managers, supply chain managers, and the management staff of these companies. So effectively what we are doing is we are connecting the supply chain from seed to sell and providing a single source of truth to different types of users in the supply chain. So that's roughly who we are and what we do. But today it's not about us, it's about our guest today. I'm pleased to welcome James Green, who is a Group Director of Agriculture at GE's Group. GE's is unique in its setup and one of the leading companies in the fresh produce sector. James is here to kind of tell and share his experiences on digital supply chains and the journey which they have started on. So James, welcome to this webinar.
Thanks, Sachin. Well, I'll start with myself. As you say, I'm a kind of a finance farming man. My background is sort of in agriculture, not by family, but by interest, and studied agriculture at university and spent a number of years in broadacre farming. Before then, I joined GE's back in the middle of the 2000s, so 2006. And actually came back into the finance world as the FD of the sort of UK commercial business, and then sort of had that role for 8 to 9 years, and then became the group FD for the last sort of 4 years. And then I've transitioned back to the sharp end of farming, if you like, and agriculture and growing since January this year, which is fantastic. And so I'm bringing a finance slant to the world of practical farming. As far as GE's is concerned, fantastic business. I think nearly 70 years old now, founded by Guy Shropshire back in 1952, and has come from there to supplying over 500 million pounds of produce to the UK and European markets primarily, but also in the USA. Over 1 billion packs of produce are delivered every year. So a very big sort of canvas on which to practice innovation, if you like, which we'll talk about shortly, and a very, very fast moving business. Nothing keeps, it's all short shelf life. So, time is of the essence every day. And the difference between a good and bad farmer is about a couple of days.
Thank you for that introduction, James. We think, GE's is probably the most innovative company in the fresh produce sector in the UK. What is the culture of innovation like in GE's?
Whether we're the most innovative, I don't know. We certainly are innovative. It's sort of almost in our strategic statement. We talk about we're achieving our goals through innovation, integration, so particularly vertical integration in the business and investment. So it's very much sort of in the DNA. John Shropshire's, his father Guy was, I think, where it started in terms of setting the culture, was innovating, particularly probably at that stage with machinery and equipment to do the job better, through to being probably the first to supply chill transport to M&S when everything used to be shipped on ambient lorries and trucks with curtain sides, through to today having huge sort of moving factories in the fields with our rigs. It's having the appetite, having the time scale, the sense of you can't just achieve these things from day to night. We don't have these big machines that we didn't have yesterday. It's always a progression, and it's having that vision that you just keep making incremental improvements, and it's the art of the possible, and having patience, I suppose. Not everything works. Some things don't work. And I think that's important to realize, and not everything works, and you've just got to try. And actually, the people in the business, if you give them the space, actually have the ideas. They know what works, what won't work, what they need. And I think it's kind of harnessing that, but then aligning it at the same time to make sure we're all going in the same direction.
In last sort of 5 to 6 years, we have seen that is slowly shifting towards more like digital innovations and digital technologies, right? I know, like, as a company, you've been experimenting and also using different types of digital tools in the business. So when you started on this, like, what was your journey like, exploring these different tools? And when you were exploring, how did you then kind of step them into the business environment and started using them actively in your day-to-day sort of business environment?
I mean, if I use an example on our sort of leafy salad crop, so we're obviously growing an awful lot of lettuce, very, very short shelf life. It's ready, for 2 or 3 days, and we are supplying 365 days a year, and therefore need to plan that we've got the right availability at the right time. Now, that's really based around temperature and sunlight. And for a long time, that was being planned with spreadsheets and using calculations to work backwards from your sale. And I think this is this point about it's always an evolution. So what we've tried to do in the last sort of 4 or 5 years is maybe automate that process, make it a bit more sophisticated, and actually just taking it on a step from being a spreadsheet to being actually a model and an algorithm where we can feed in the sort of the weather data and the temperature data. We can feed in all of our planting records, etc. So it's become more dynamic rather than it just being not once a year, but you set the crop off at the start of the season, and it then grows through, and it may or may not be earlier or later. We've tried to make it more precise by living that as a live process, handling more and more data as we go through, and each year we keep making enhancements. So it's just adding things on, but as you said, you've got to be able to sort of execute the learnings that may come out of that model, and you've got to have a business that's able to sort of do things differently on the back of that innovation, because it's not what we necessarily did before, and that's sometimes a challenge. And what is actually got a real benefit, and then you can measure that benefit and see the benefits. I think we've had a lot of success at making our supply that much more robust because we've got much better visibility about what's coming. If you think about the weather we've had in this year, and COVID, and some of the weather people may have seen in Spain, where we grow in the winters, we are often dealing with very interesting weather events, and trying to manage our way around those is tricky, and those tools have helped us do that in a better way.
Great. So you mentioned about this behavioral aspect, and which we think is quite important in starting or implementing digital tools. Would you like to comment a few things on that in terms of how do you make sure that your staff picks up new tools and they have the discipline of entering the data in a timely manner as well? Because ultimately, if they don't enter something in a timely way, then your results, which your model is going to generate, they're going to be different as well.
I mean, I think that's kind of a constant challenge. There's no question there's a constant challenge. I'd come back to the fact of really trying to explain the why. And I'm a believer from a finance perspective that sometimes the financial incentives can help that, because if they're not aligned to your goals, you're going to have difficulty, because somebody's not going to want to incur a bit more cost in his bit of the chain to make a saving in another bit of the chain. So maybe we have to make the financial sort of benefits of those two bits the right way. But I think it's the why. If you can explain the why, show how it happens, and then prove that it actually has happened, it actually will sort itself out. I think if you go in without really understanding what you're trying to achieve, there's a lot of pretty pictures, there's a lot of pretty dashboards around in ag tech, but actually, how does it make me make better decisions? How does it make my product better? How do I make it, cheaper, more efficient, etc.? Less errors. A lot of what we've learned with the innovation piece and the digital piece is just removing errors, not necessarily big step changes in understanding. It's actually about that point about it forces you to be robust in data collection, as you've said, because garbage in, garbage out. And actually a lot of what you then end up achieving is the low-hanging fruit of clarity of that data, as opposed to necessarily huge insight from the platform. At the stage we've got to now, I think we now can move that on, but I think there's a lot of easy wins that maybe the ag tech companies don't tell you about, because you're just being much more systematic and robust in how you capture the data.
Absolutely. So James, in terms of, as you explained, you have different business units and their own P&L. So you have, like, let's say greenhouse, your farming operations, then you have certain pack house and so on, right? And within that, GES has kind of implemented a number of different digital tools. So what are the challenges and pain points in implementing, especially in implementing those digital tools? And how do you think KisanHub like platform can help you address those challenges?
For me, in general, the frustration is that there's lots of the solutions are siloed in themselves, because they all offer a little bit of what we want. Yeah. So I think the lack of, if you like, a one-stop shop is a frustration, because different providers provide different bits of the jigsaw, but actually they're different bits of different jigsaws, probably, rather than different bits of the same jigsaw. So I think that's a difficulty, and I think we are certainly wrestling at GES with how do we bring more data sets together, whether that's drone imagery that we have, or it's irrigation information that we have, or it's just our normal agronomic information from Gatekeeper, for example, where we keep all of our sort of agronomic applications and treatments and those sort of things, tied in with lots of production data and all the batches of crop that we have. That is what we are literally wrestling with at the moment, to try and bring it together to allow us to gain further insight out of it, which I know sort of we've been talking, Sachin, about how KisanHub has that ability to actually provide that sort of data gathering and pooling that will then allow us to run analyses over the top of bigger data sets, without having the worry about actually sort of, if you like, maintaining them and looking after the background of them. So I think that's certainly what we're wrestling with at the moment as our next step, because we've got lots of silos of digital information as well as still even analog manual information that we need to capture.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we have sort of this dual challenge where some of the information is still in analog mode, and where it is digitized, often these are like point solutions or siloed solutions. And this is why, our ambition is really to connect that supply chain from seed to sell, bring that all data on one platform, provide single source of truth, but most importantly, provide that the cleaned and well-managed data set, so that users and the management teams can take better informed decisions based on that data. So we know, we've been speaking to a number of different fresh produce companies in the UK, outside UK, and these companies are sort of thinking or planning to digitize their operations, bring in some digital tools, capture data, and help them take better decisions. So based on your experience, what are your sort of key learnings or some of the challenges which you've gone through, probably to help them to kind of get the digital implementation in a better shape and form in their own companies?
Key thing is, don't be led by solutions looking for a problem. Understand your own problem first, and what is that information, what's the problem you want to solve, what's the information you have in your business that you want to, if you like, collect, what other data can be collected that you're not even able to do, such as, for example, maybe drone imagery or other sensors, etc. And I think making sure that you've actually got committed resource to doing that, because I'm not sure you can innovate and run the production engine at the same time, because they tend to compete with each other, because one person's trying to make it as cost efficient as possible, whereas innovation involves some investment and time and thought, etc. And I think the other thing is keep it simple. Keep it simple and do small steps at a time. Don't try a big bang, because it isn't going to work, because there'll just be too much. And actually, you won't be able to get the people on board with so many changes at the same time. I think doing little bits, gaining confidence, and then building on it, as we said with our machines, it's an evolution, not a revolution.
Great. And that understanding is really key, where often, complex businesses try to implement the systems, and the implementation can go on for like 5-6 years. And then it's hard to kind of measure the ROI, and also see what kind of business problems and challenges has been solved by that tool. So again, over here on those learnings, how important do you think is the mindset of people is, or even the management buy-in, for example, right? Because that can be a big difference in the business before we actually start these implementations.
I think it's almost the only thing that matters, because you can have all the technology you like, whether it's digital technology, great machines, or bits of plant and equipment. If you haven't got the people to run them with the right attitude and mentality, you're doomed to failure. Okay,
that's good to know. So it's very people-centric. Innovation, implementation of digital tools, very people-centric. People often talk about machine learning, artificial intelligence, and removing people out of the whole process. But it's such a central to any business, and that's good to know about that.
Yeah.
So, James, I think that was really fascinating conversation. Honestly, I would like to kind of summarize some of the key points from this discussion. I know we are already 3 minutes over, but I'll take probably a minute to kind of summarize that, because it's really important. I think what you said from your unique background of finance and farming, and G's as an innovative company, is really like that mindset, that people-centric approach, and having the mindset, having the management buy-in, having the staff buy-in for any sort of innovation is the important thing, or the most important thing. I think tech is kind of enabler for that, but ultimately I think it's up to people, and really how do they embrace these tools, and how do they implement within the business to solve the problems and then extract value out of it. So that's really a big takeaway for me. But also having that appetite and vision for innovation. And if you see the AgTech horizon, it's quite complex, it's quite wide. Even within digital, we have a number of different solutions, and we kind of briefly touched on them. So it's important that understanding your own business, and understanding different facets of the business, and how do you bring those tools in the business to solve the challenges and problems which you have. So fascinating discussion. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much all for joining this conversation today. We are having another session next month, so that will be with the chairman and CEO of Sahyadri Farms in India, Sachin Shende, and he'll be speaking role of software and technology in exporting fresh produce to different countries. So that will be another sort of fascinating conversation, and he'll be touching different aspects on the quantity, quality aspects when the software is used. So yeah, thanks for attending today's session, and I look forward to seeing you all next month. Thank you very much, James.